Okay, we are talking today about the Shakespeare DBQ. This is your essay for the Shakespeare unit on appearances and trickery. The first thing that we're going to do when we're looking at the Shakespeare DBQ is right here you're going to look at your hook. What do you know to be true and factual about William Shakespeare? So take a minute and list out anything that you know for a fact about William Shakespeare. After you do that, we'll discuss, we'll stop the video and discuss what you know and what you might be educated about William Shakespeare. Okay? And the second thing that we need to do is read the background information here. Now, this is from Bill Bryson. He's an expert on Shakespeare, writer, American writer who lived in England for many, many years, and wrote an excellent biography on William Shakespeare. Okay, after you get done reading that, we're going to come down here and see what is our prompt. And the prompt is, Shakespeare was the ideal Renaissance man. Now, your job is to either support this prompt or refute it. That means that you support, you can argue for it, that he was the ideal Renaissance man. If you're going to refute it, it means that you're going to argue against it. Shakespeare was not the ideal Renaissance man. So in order to do that, you need to come down and see the definition of Renaissance man. Now, according to the dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, it is a person with many talents or areas of knowledge. And then we have this excellent quote from Castellani. And this is an older quote, it's from 1528. But he describes the Renaissance man as bold, stern, always among the first, gentle, modest, reserved, avoiding ostentation or showiness, and self-praise. So he's a very modest person. He needs to be accomplished in letters. That means he needs to be well written, well read. Also needs to be studying the humanities. That's your English and history or humanities. He also should be well versed in Latin and Greek, as well as the poets. And here from 1528, he means the ancient poets. Also in the orators and the historians. So he needs to know his history. And he also needs to be able to write well in verse and prose. That's a typo. Let me fix that. Prose. Okay? So, when you come down and look at the definition of Renaissance man, it gives you a better idea of whether or not you can define William Shakespeare as a Renaissance man or not. Because remember, you are either supporting or refuting that argument. Now, to better help you, we have several documents down here that you're going to pull from. Document 1 is a picture from William Shakespeare's funerary monument in Holy Trinity Church. There he is. One of only two absolutely, we know for a fact, pictures of William Shakespeare. The other one appearing on the first folio in the black and white etching. Everything else is sort of, we think might be him, but might also not be him. I apologize, my phone seems to be blowing up over here. I'll have to mute that thing. Okay, so underneath here, which is this written part underneath William Shakespeare, it says in Latin, and then it has an English poem underneath there as well. So the translation of the Latin is, a Pylian in judgment, a Socrates in genius, a Maro in art, comparing the end, then it says, the earth and buries him, the people mourn him, Olympus possesses him. So it talks about Mount Olympus and the Greek gods. It refers to Shakespeare as the king of Pylos, and it compares him to Socrates and also to Virgil, the Roman poet. So he's being compared to all these famous and well-known Greek and Latin, and that might come into up here where you say, I would have him well versed in the Latin language and in Greek. Okay. It also says an English poem, which says, stay passenger, why go you by so fast? Read if y'all can, whom envious death hath placed within the monument Shakespeare, with whom quick nature died, whose name does deck this tomb, far more than cost, since all that he has written leaves living art, but page to service wit. So it talks about his wonderful writing being living art and witty, as well. He was very smart and contained a lot of wit, and so therefore being well versed, well written. Okay, so that's all a translation of this one. This one's the hardest one, so I thought I would go by line with you on this one, in my opinion. But what you're going to do is you're looking for evidence in here to support or refute that he is the Renaissance man. Now we can see here that since he's being compared to Greek philosophers, he is being talked about as if he were a Greek god. It talks about him with the Latin, with Virgil. His writing is so wonderful, it's excellent. Then this would definitely be a pro argument. So you're going to come out to the side and write pro out to the side, because this is a document that you would want to use if you were supporting William Shakespeare as the ideal Renaissance man. Now, after you write pro out here to the side, you are looking for things that you can put into your buckets, because this is a DBQ. So if we go all the way down to our buckets, you can see that a lot of times with the DBQ, you have to label the buckets on your own, but I've gone ahead and labeled them for you. Talents and areas of knowledge. So we're going to use two different highlighters to bucket this information. So rather than writing all the information in the buckets themselves, we're going to highlight, because I find that to be easier. So we're going to pick a color. I'm going to say yellow for talents, and another color for areas of knowledge. I'm going to go with, how about pink? Okay. All right, so if you do not have highlighters right now, then you need to go ahead and grab yourself some highlighters so you can go through and pink and yellow your work, and this will be your pre-work. So as you are going through, you're looking for things that you can put into the talent bucket and things that you can put into the knowledge bucket. If you've never done a DBQ before, you can definitely see where this will come into play in a minute. If you have, then you're familiar with putting that stuff in the buckets. Okay, so I'll take a, make a pause in the video so you can go get your highlighters. I'm going to come back up here to the text. All right, now that you have your highlighters, we're going to go through and find knowledge and talents in here. We made talents, went down. We made talents yellow and knowledge pink. So let's go up here. Let's start with talents. He is very talented, okay? Or he's not very talented if you're going to argue against. All right, so let's go back to yellow. So we're looking for talent. I'll give you a minute to do this. And I'm going to go through as well. Okay. So actually, you might want to stop the video again so you can go through and find it in here. And then I'm going to come through and give you some of my ideas. Okay, so talking about all as he has written leaves living art and page to surface wit. So that is talking about how he is so very, very, very talented. He knows, he's done so much wonderful writing. Okay, even death should be envious of him because he is So awesome, excellent, so forth. Okay. Also, he is amazing up here as well. I'm going to use this one as knowledge, though, since it's talking about Roman poet, Greek philosopher. I feel like this is really the idea that he knew these things so very well. I'm going to take the whole quote right here, the original quote, translation of the quote. Pylon in judgment, Socrates in genius, Amaro in art. Basically saying that he is so amazing with his knowledge of these things. I don't think that they would have compared him to these ancients had he not been familiar with the ancients. But you could also say this is his talent. He's so awesome that he deserves to be made a piling in judgment and so forth. Okay, but I'm going to mark it as pink. Of course, there is always some subjectivity here. Okay. So let's go down and do a little bit more. I'm going to hit a passage a little bit further down. It's one of the more difficult passages. And it is this document 5. Okay. So I'm going to look in here for some more references to him being knowledgeable. Okay. So, and I also want to put some thoughts in here on if you want to refute it. The other one was a very supporting document. I'll come through for a refuting document. So the first line of this text says, a comment from poet and playwright Ben Jonson is from the eulogy of Shakespeare, conveying that the bard had small Latin and less Greek. So this is definitely talking about his knowledge, so I'm going to highlight that as pink. And I would come out to the right, to the side, and put this as a con, because it's saying that he had very little knowledge in Latin and Greek. He was not very talented. Now Ben Jonson was a contemporary of William Shakespeare, and so he's really saying something kind of ugly about him. I might also highlight him as the speaker of this quote, because when I use it in my text, when I use it in my essay itself, I might want to reference that Ben Jonson said this, although I would cite it, of course, as Phillips and Hunt, that being the source. Okay. Now, although this is a negative comment, it comes in afterwards and talks about how he is well-versed. Okay, so while Jonson's remarks may have been fairly accurate for Elizabethan standards of the time, there's growing internal evidence that Shakespeare, in fact, possessed a considerable amount of both Latin and Greek. So here, Phillips and Hunt are talking about, I'm going to highlight this pink as well, how very knowledgeable he was. Considerable command of both Latin and Greek. So this is actually a pro argument. I could write pro out here to the side. So if I was going to support him as being the ideal Renaissance man, this would be a good supporting quote. So you can find supporting and refuting quotes within the same document, depending on how it's read. You can see here that they have hooked you in with a quote from a contemporary to Shakespeare, saying how he didn't have any Latin or Greek knowledge, and then came in and wrote about how he actually did. So you can find both of those points in here. All of this is all also supporting evidence for him. So as you come through any of these documents, you're looking for, was he knowledgeable? Did he know things? Was he educated in that extent? And also, was he talented? Was he good at what he did? Did what he produced make him a kind of ideal Renaissance man? Okay. So you're going to do that for the whole rest of the DBQ. You're going to go through each one of the documents and break it apart and find that evidence and highlight that evidence when you find it with the markers. Now, once you've done that, you've completed all of that. Oh, I made all that highlighted. Oops. Just take that off the highlighter, shouldn't I? Start highlighting the whole text. Okay, when I've done that, then I've created my buckets by highlighting for talent and areas of knowledge. Then I can develop my thesis. Now, my thesis is basically going to say Shakespeare was an ideal Renaissance man because, and you can see with your chicken foot, this is where you would put this. Hopefully you've got